So I'm Linda Tobash. I'm Senior Advisor for Education. I'm Director of the New York Project Bridge Program here in New York, and I'm really excited to welcome you here, not just for this celebration that we have for each year's cohort, but for this 30th anniversary celebration. Um, you know, um, um, as I said, tonight we're both celebrating these students, but we're celebrating all the students and everyone who's worked on the program over these 30 years. Tonight, you're going to be hearing, as I said, from our students, but you're going to be hearing from individuals who've been involved with the program. You're going to be hearing from or I should say, our major sponsor for the program, and of course from our youth ambassadors. For those of you joining us virtually, when we get to the Q&A, you can please send us your comments or your questions. We'll be monitoring the Korean studies at koreasociety.org email, and that's Korean studies, one word, at koreasociety, one word, .org. So please just send those, and we'll do our best to incorporate your questions and comments. We have a very full program tonight, and we hope that you enjoy it, and we hope to make it as fun and engaging as possible. And now it's my great pleasure to welcome Thomas Byrne, the President and CEO of the Korea Society, to the podium for welcoming remarks.
Well, thanks, Toby, and it's great to see all of you. And I just have to say it's really great to see Toby after all these years, because we were Peace Corps volunteers in Korea, and we both met each other first all the way back in the day. So welcome to the Korea Society. For the record, we are a non-governmental, nonprofit organization dedicated solely to the promotion of greater awareness, understanding, and cooperation between the people of Korea and the United States. We have been doing this for 66 years now, since we were established in New York City by General James A. Van Fleet, the longest-serving UN Forces commander during the Korean War, whom President Eisenhower remarked, "I can think of no one who symbolizes better the friendship between the peoples of these two great countries." This evening is a very special occasion. Not only is this our first Project Bridge celebration since 2019, but we are welcoming both our newest youth ambassadors, along with alumni who have participated in the program over the past 30 years. We are pleased to have all of you with us. Since the program began in 1993 as Kids to Korea, I think Youth Ambassador sounds a bit more distinguished than that, by Ambassador Donald Gregg, who was a chairman of the Korea Society for a long time. And it was established to build bridges between the peoples of Korea and the United States, but in particular between the peoples of Korea and the African American community in the United States after the 1992 Los Angeles race riots. And since then, over 400 students have participated. This evening, we are showcasing the recent cohort of Project Bridge ambassadors, 8 from New York City, 8 students who hail from across the 5 New York City boroughs, along with their parents, families, and friends, and teachers. You have all worked hard this past year, participating in 15 workshops since last November, in which you have explored Korean history in general and the Korean War in particular, as well as language, etiquette, cuisine, and culture. You have also learned about the economic miracle on the Han and explored what school life in Korea is like for the typical student of your age. And you investigated the roots and underlying tensions of the April 29th riots, in Korean language called Sa-i-gu, 429, when all these tensions exploded in Koreatown in Los Angeles. And you have just recently returned from the 10-day study tour group, in which Toby told me that you admirably conducted yourselves in building bridges between the peoples of Korea and the U.S. So with that, congratulations, and I look forward to the rest of tonight's program.
Thanks, Tom. And our next speaker, unfortunately, couldn't be with us here in person. That's Ambassador Kathleen Stevens, who also was a Peace Corps volunteer during the same time that Tom and I were there. And so we're sort of a, an old club, should I say. Kathleen Stevens served as ambassador to Korea. And she also is the chair of the Korea Society Board. She has a unique perspective on the program because she's also the chair of the Pacific Century Institute. And so what you'll be hearing from us is this is a New York Project Bridge program, but for many, many years, we've partnered with the Pacific Century Institute, and they handle and select the LA Project Bridge Youth Ambassadors. So it's wonderful to hear her welcoming remarks as well. So I think we can take it away.
안녕하십니까. I'm Kathleen Stevens, and I'm so pleased to join you, even if it's only virtually, to mark a very important anniversary. 30 years with the Project Bridge program, which for 30 years has been sending young people from communities in Los Angeles, the New York area, and now Montana to Korea after the completion of some months of intensive study and community building to prepare for such a trip. I know how transformative these programs can be. I saw it in my own life when I went to Korea as a relatively young woman, almost as young as the youth ambassadors are, but even more in my work with the Korea Society, Pacific Century Institute, and at the U.S. Embassy in Seoul. Over the years, I've met these youth ambassadors as they study, as they travel to Korea, and seeing the impact it's had on their lives and the impact they've had on communities in Korea and in the United States. So congratulations to all who have participated, who continue to be ambassadors, youth and otherwise, and to all those who continue the program. Enjoy the evening, and let's hope for another great 30 years.
And we have one more recorded message, and this is someone who's not involved with Project Bridge, but is involved with the Project Bridge Youth Ambassadors since the 2017-2018 cohort, and that is Dr. Gerald Krizik. He is the president of Friends of Korea. So Dr. Krizik was also a Peace Corps volunteer. And Friends of Korea is an organization that was started many, many years ago by returned Peace Corps volunteers, right? But as Peace Corps volunteers who left Korea once it was a developed country, obviously Peace Corps wouldn't remain. But our ties to Korea have always been strong and always remained. And so it was returned Peace Corps volunteers who started Friends of Korea. And as we realized, we're not getting any younger, and we want the organization to continue growing. We actually welcome in, I happen to be on the board as well, we welcome in, a number of scholars, researchers, Fulbrighters, and again, since 2018, through the generous support of the Pacific Century Institute, our youth ambassadors from all sites are provided with lifetime membership in Friends of Korea. So he was trying to get here, but he wasn't able to, but he's prepared remarks for us to just sort of welcome you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jerry Kurzik, and I serve as the president of Friends of Korea. Tonight, I'd like to congratulate you on the 30th anniversary celebration of Project Bridge Youth Ambassadors. There are three things I'd like to say to you today. The first is to express my appreciation to the Korea Society and the Pacific Century Institute for partnering on this wonderful program. I can think of no other program that helps us all develop the cultural dexterity we need to be effective in a multicultural society. Plus, we have the added advantage of learning about Korea, a country that we have great affection for. The second is to congratulate all of you, particularly the 2023 Project Bridge Youth Ambassadors. I hope you all have had a wonderful year participating in the various activities of the program. And then finally, I'd like to welcome you to the Friends of Korea. Under the generous sponsorship of the PCI, you all have lifetime memberships to Friends of Korea. This will help you continue your connection to Korean culture. We share the same values of the Pacific Century Institute, the Korea Society, and the Mansfield Center at the University of Montana. It's to build cultural awareness and friendship between a variety of people, and in this case, Koreans and Americans. As members of Friends of Korea, you can participate in all our activities. For example, webinars, seminars, and our annual membership conference. We hope that you all become active members. So in closing, congratulations on the 30th anniversary, and we look forward to seeing you at future Friends of Korea events. Good night.
And now I'm thrilled to be able to invite to the podium a real life speaker, a live speaker. And tonight with us, it's our honor actually very much to welcome Mr. Sungwon Bae, Director of Korea Foundation USA. I really thank you, as earlier I said, thank you for coming from a less smoggy, smoke-filled DC, and coming, risking coming up and the air quality here in New York. So we much appreciate it. And again, thank you for your ongoing support to the Korea Society in general, for the many things that you support, many programs that you support us on, but more particularly and specifically Project Bridge. I was digging through our records to see when that sort of support began, and it's at least as early as 1998, when you would support us for a dinner and a meeting in Seoul or in Korea when we were in Korea. Obviously, over the years, that level of support has grown, and we wouldn't be able to have this program without your support. So it means so much to us. So, Mr. Bae, I'd like to invite you to the podium. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda, for all your kind words. I'm very happy to be here. In front of, I believe we are all friends of Korea. So now I feel like I'm surrounded by those people who are at Peace Corps, who are involved with Peace Corps to Korea, and our youth ambassadors. So all the history, all the good things have been already laid out. So I just want to make one or 2 points. As you all know, this year marks the 70th anniversary of Korea USRK Alliance, and there's a saying in Korea that in your whole lifetime, if you have one or two true friend, you have lived a very successful life. Now, seeing our youth ambassadors, I think Korea have lived and have invested to very good friends, and I hope your interest and your connection to Korea lasts for over than 70 years from now on. Our Korea Foundation, we try to promote Korea here in the United States. We have various kind of programs that our youth ambassadors could take benefit of it. And one of the example is when I was coming up to this building, I met Frances, who is sitting there, who was a former cohort of youth ambassador. She was one of the youth ambassadors, and she's keeping her interest. She's on Korea. I was told that she'll be leaving for Korea for more studies at Yonsei University, which is one of the most renowned university in Korea, where I graduated. So when you meet me next time, ask for me to buy you a drink. So, anyways, thank you very much for inviting me, Linda. Thank you very much to Korea Society for keeping this program for this long, and I hope to see again youth ambassadors. I really hope you don't lose the connection with Korea. Keep it on, and thank you.
Thank you so much. We could go on and on and on about celebrating 30 years of Project Bridge. But I think it's important to hear the words of Ambassador Donald Gregg, who actually created the program. And in fact, he created it in 1993, shortly after he returned from serving as ambassador in Korea, where he served from 1989 to 1993. And in his memoirs, he indicates that he really thought about this program of sort of promoting greater understanding even while he was still ambassador. But we're proud to say that this is a flagship program of the Korea Society, in the sense that for Donald Gregg, this was the first program he initiated shortly after he came. So while he couldn't be here with us today, in February, he was provided with an award at the Pacific Century Institute annual dinner. And he prepared recorded remarks there for specific questions that he was asked. And one of the questions he was asked was, why did you begin Project Bridge? So let's hear directly from Ambassador Gregg explaining why he began this program.
The 1992 riots in Los Angeles disturbed me deeply. It damaged the Koreatown. People were talking past each other. It was important to try to reach out to young people and build bridges to help them understand Koreans more and to show what we all have as a shared humanity. After I had returned to the U.S. in 1993, my first project was to start a program called Kids to Korea that subsequently evolved into what today is Project Bridge. Initially, the program involved sending inner-city black kids to Korea to show them what Korea was really like. Later, as the program was fleshed out, Project Bridge became an annual project of the Korea Society and the Pacific Century Institute, and evolved into the flagship activity of a multifaceted effort to promote greater tolerance and understanding. I'm so pleased that 30 years later, it is still such an effective tool for building mutual understanding.
And we're very happy to say that it is. It's a strong tool. We have over 400 alumni. And we have, when we send out surveys, we get tremendous responses in terms of what a life-changing event this is. And for example, with Francis, you're now studying history, Asian studies, and focusing in on Korean studies. You know, would she have done that prior to actually entering college without this program? Probably not. And we hear that again and again and again from individuals. But I'm really thrilled to invite to the stage, even though when you see her, you're going to find, oh, she was a student in the first cohort. No, she actually met Ambassador Gregg very soon after he arrived, heard him speak about wanting to do something, and she's just going to briefly tell you about that. So, Dr. Hagenborn, will you please come to the podium?
Thank you, Toby. Hi, everyone. And my name is Christine Hagedorn. I am standing here with you in June of 2023, right? Talking about this program, watching pictures about this program that I went on or traveled on in August of, did I just say 2023? Right, August of 1993, right? 30 years ago this summer. So right around this time, I was probably getting my visa in order and getting ready to fly to Korea on what was then an entirely new idea, as you just heard from Ambassador Gregg, something we had never done before. And we were kind of figuring it out as we went. But interestingly, when I hear about the things you're doing now and see these photos, the program hasn't really changed all that much. And so Toby had asked me to share how did I get involved. And since I was one of the only people probably in the room that was there when it first started, I would love to share very briefly. What had happened then was we had this wonderful Korea Society, and I was a member, and I was in my mid-20s at the time, and we weren't as large as we are now, but we were still pretty large and did a lot of programming. And one thing we didn't have yet was a Young Professionals Council. So there were a lot of young people starting to come to the programs. And some folks decided we should found it's still now the YPC, right?
Well, there's a young YPN.
YPN network.
Young professional network.
That-
So they're a little bit old.
Yeah, so we were like in our 20s and 30s, and we were looking for more programming specific to our age group. So we started this group, and we got together and planned our first event. And to that event, we invited the then new chairman of the Korea Society, who was Ambassador Greg, to speak. And I still have a visual memory of it because, you know, when you're emotionally moved by something, you remember that, right? And I was sitting in the audience, and Ambassador Greg, we were in a different location, not this location, and he came to address what was the new Young Professionals Network or Council. And he started to talk about his plans for the Korea Society and how he was very pleased at that time to see young people interested, 20s and 30s, interested in U.S.-Korea relations and public diplomacy. And then I remember he went on to start talking about Sa-i-gu and what had happened in LA in Koreatown in 1992. Now, I should say that this event was it was winter time. It was either December of 92 or January of 93, maybe February of 93, because I know it was cold out. And, I'm trying to remember back 30 years, right? So we didn't have like iPhones to capture all our memories, so we just have to rely on our memories. So Ambassador Greg started talking, and I remember feeling really moved about what he was saying. He was saying how concerned he was about the social justice issues, the racial tensions and unrest that had been a result of the riots, and how much he now, in his new role as chairman of the Korea Society, wanted to do something. And it was interesting that he had this idea of using youth, right? And I wasn't sure really until just now when I heard Ambassador Greg talking about, wanting to use youth as the ambassadors. He could have created any type of program, right? But I thought that was maybe because he was speaking to the young professionals. But I think he had a lot more strategy behind that. And he was so smart to realize that I don't think he probably would have realized that this program would run every year for 30 years, even throughout the pandemic, virtually, And so after that moving talk, and he seemed so genuinely concerned and wanting to do something, I couldn't help it. I just walked up to him, and I had never met Ambassador Greg, and I said, "Hello, my name is Christine Hagedorn, and I'm really moved by what you're saying, and I'm also social justice minded, and I have been working at the Korean government, at the Korean embassy in Washington, D.C. for 4 years, but now I'm here in New York, living in New York and working in New York, and so I'd like to help in any way, anything I can do to help you." So I, didn't know what he would have me do, maybe create flyers, make phone calls, but 3 weeks later, I got a phone call from his assistant, and the person on the phone said, "Would you be a chaperone? We're going to Korea in August. We're going to bring probably, I think, 7 or so students from New York City and around a few students from LA. And we had Ambassador Greg was a chaperone. The director of the Korea Society was a chaperone. I was a chaperone, and another woman who worked at the Korea Society. And then from the LA side, we had a pastor and 2 of his assistant pastors. And we went, and we were kind of building the plane as we were flying it because we had not really ever had such a program before. But interestingly, we did all of the things that you do, except, what's the one that I said we did? We didn't go to the temple, which looks like a really neat thing to do, so I can't wait to hear about that. And we stayed at the U.S. Army base. I think Ambassador Greg was very newly back from Korea, so he had a lot of contacts. He was the U.S. ambassador there. So we stayed there. I think we were there for 2 whole weeks. It seemed like a very long time, 10 days. And we did so much. And, think about, we were the first 14 or 16, I don't remember how many, but 400 young people have had this experience, and it's just very exciting to be here and meet you and hear about your experience. So thank you for asking me to speak about it.
And thank you, Christine, for coming up from Philadelphia. Not such a burden when it comes to the air quality. Your air is about as bad as ours, I hear, but thank you for coming up. And actually, it was Christine who reached out to me and said, are you doing Project Bridge? I'm like, yes. And she goes, well, I've been involved from the beginning. I'm like, we need to talk. So she has a wealth of information and photos and history. And one thing that Christine said that is very much true, the structure over the 30 years has remained pretty stable. It's a 10-day study tour, and with accompanying workshops. What has changed is when the workshops fall. For those first few years, it was a study tour, and I think in your year, you actually had the workshops in Korea, and then some after. Frequently, it was a study tour and then workshops. But definitely since 99, 2000, it's a series of workshops before to actually help students prepare, for, being good youth ambassadors, for being good intercultural communicators, and preparing them for that experience. But study tour, workshops, those have always been in place. The first 4 years were funded, or the second 4 years, probably 94 forward, were actually funded by the Korean Federation of Trade Industries. So the visits that we have when we go on the study tour and learning about the economic miracle, right, in Korea, those visits, POSCO, Hyundai, have always been in place from the beginning, even in your visit, I think. The importance of that and the importance to that to Korean evolution. So these components that have always been there. Visits to the DMZ. In fact, every single group. And we're pulling this all together for sort of a history of the of the Project Bridge that we hope to have by September when we launch the next application cycle. But the iconic photo of the 2 guards standing with their hands behind their back, staring over onto the North Korean side. That's every single year. That photo's been taken, and it looks almost identical. So for every single year, whether it's black and white or in color, it's just, you could swap it out for any year. And when students are standing on the other side of the negotiating table, on the North Korean side, again, the looks on their faces, sort of very much resemble one another. But over the years, things have changed. Those first few years was a little bit experimentation. Now it's LA and New York. That first year it was LA and New York. But the second year, and that was only African Americans. By the second year, it was African Americans and Hispanics and included DC. By 1995, it was Hispanics, African Americans, and Korean Americans, and included Birmingham, Atlanta, DC, LA, and New York, and there was a contingent of 35. Then one year it was just 16 students from Washington, D.C. So through those first through the 90s, it was sort of, a bit changeable. But moving forward, but it's always been the commitment to sort of promote greater racial understanding and greater intercultural understanding. Over the years, our workshops have focused more on Korean history, culture, current events and tensions actually on the peninsula, and sort of encouraging a greater understanding and a greater understanding of the importance of the U.S.-Korean alliance. this bond that we have forged in blood, and so that they see that. And as I said, I could go on and on. There were no changes in the program for many, many years. You had your coastal New York, coastal LA. Sometimes always up until before COVID, the first time they met was at Incheon Airport. With COVID, that was a change in that we couldn't go. It was the only time we've had the cohort sign on for 2 years. And we have one person, Chelsea's here. Want to raise your hand? Yeah. And you know what? They never got to go. We couldn't go in 2020, 2021, but they had 40 workshops. And, sort of a captive audience because everybody was locked down, right? So we had a few workshops before, in like late 2019, early 2020, and then a final workshop in 2021. But that's a tight-knit group. And I think you learned a lot, but didn't have that in-person experience. But thank you for being here tonight. And then the only other recent change was bringing in a rural voice, and that's with the Maureen and Mike Mansfield Center, which is at the University of Montana. And some people go, why? Well, Mike Mansfield was ambassador to Japan, and many people would say that he actually was very inspirational in writing sort of our policy towards, East Asia or Northern East Asia. And so in their programming, they had a lot of programs with sort of Southeast Asian countries, but they didn't have strong programming for Korea. So they said, number one, we need you because we want to build our programming with Korea, but you also need us because you're talking about where there are tensions, right? And right now in the US, we have tensions between urban and rural. And we're going to hear a little bit about that from our youth ambassadors. And so really, without further ado, I really want us to hear from the youth ambassadors. We're going to have a Q&A with them, a panel discussion with them. We'll be opening that up to questions from the floor and virtually, and we know we started a little late, but we will reward you for your patience if you're here in person, obviously, and we do have some delicious Korean food waiting for you. So I'd like to ask the youth ambassadors to come up to the stage. Okay, please use the steps. You don't need to try to hop up on the stage, you can use the steps. And so we're going to begin. We're just going to go down the row, and they're going to tell you who they are, what school they go to, how they heard about the program, and why they wanted to apply.
Hi, my name is Alexa Dew. I go to Susan E. Wagner High School in Staten Island, New York, and I heard about this program from my mom. Shout out to my mom and my family. And I applied to this program because I wanted to learn more about Korean culture as it became more popular in the US. It just interested me, and and since we live in a heterogeneous society and we have an individualistic mindset, I wanted to know what life was like in a homogeneous society, and like, for example, Korea. And this was an amazing opportunity to do that. And I also really like Korean food, so that was a plus.
Hi, my name is Oliver Rigg. I go to Brooklyn Technical High School. I'm currently a junior there, and I heard about the program from my AP World History teacher, Mr. McManaman, who's currently here today. So I'd like to thank him for that. In his class, I learned a little bit about Korean history, like a very small amount. The curriculum doesn't really cover that, but I heard a little bit, and I think through popular culture, K-pop, K-dramas, I'm starting to get these tidbits of Korea in my life, but I knew so little about it, and I figured, as the world is becoming ever more interconnected, I kind of saw it as my responsibility, and thankfully the Korea Society was here for that, to go out into the world and get that experience and introduce myself to a new culture.
Hi, my name is Jordan Leung. I'm a junior at Stuyvesant High School. I first heard about this program through my sister, who was actually a youth ambassador herself in the 2020 and 2021 cohort, which didn't actually get to go on the study tour, but had like the 40 workshops. And that got me interested in this program because she kept saying how nice it was to learn about Korea through these workshops. And that inspired me to learn more about the Korean history myself and through these workshops.
Hello, nice to meet you. My name's Sophia Mueller. I also go to Stuyvesant High School and I'm a junior. I've been interested in all things Korea since 6th grade. I really like K-pop, K-dramas, and also the food. I've been learning Korean, so I thought this was the perfect opportunity. I learned about this program from the mother of my friend. She saw it in a school email and then she thought, oh, this is great for Sophia. So she sent it over and I applied. So it was a very nice opportunity. I liked the trip to Korea and the workshops were also very informative.
Hi, my name is Kyler Known, and I'm a junior at Hunter College High School. I first heard about the program through my counselor at school, and I was interested in applying because I'm Korean American, but I always felt like I didn't know enough about my culture, and I thought it was a great opportunity to learn about my heritage and to be able to go and visit Korea.
Hello, my name is Aiden Respaldo. I'm a junior at Landmark High School. I actually heard about the program through a former alumni, Diego, who unfortunately couldn't make it tonight, but to make a long story short, he just called me while he was over there, and I noticed it was pitch black outside. So I was like, where are you? And he was like, oh, I'm in Korea. I'm doing XYZ. And in my mind, I was like, if he's doing this, why can't I do this? So I asked him, how do I sign up and apply? And here we are now. So my question was, what did I learn about myself over the whole course of the...
Oh, you can hold off on that. But then,
Oh, it's just introductions?
okay. Yeah,
Sorry.
I didn't ask you yet.
I'm sorry.
So you're jumping the gun. Yeah. Aiden is one of our most eager youth ambassadors.
Hello, my name is Jacqueline Palaguachi. I go to High School of Law, Advocacy, and Community Justice. I heard about the program through my teacher, who was very involved in Project Bridge as well. But she unfortunately couldn't have come here as well, but it's okay. I was interested because since I was little, my dad always taught me about other cultures. He was very big about respect and being respectful to anyone. It doesn't matter who it is. And being able to have an opportunity to do this doesn't really seem, at least for when I was younger, if I told myself that I would be doing this, it wouldn't have seemed real. So I just kind of, took it upon myself to do it and just go with it. So, yeah.
Thank you. 안녕하세요. My name is Vienna. I go to Millennium High School in the Financial District, and I heard of this program through my guidance counselor because I'm really interested in studying abroad, especially during quarantine, where I found that I did a lot of cultural exploration, and I just found more online of other cultures. So that just interested me. And yeah, that's why I was interested.
Great. So let's pass the microphone back. And we'll start with the Q&A and with Alexa. So Alexa, many students, when they first hear about the program, what they think about is a study tour. And they think it's the most important component of the program. And it is a highlight of the program, but we do so much more. So can you tell us a bit about the full range of activities and what you learned?
Yes, so when I first got into the program, I was most excited for the studies. I was most excited for the study tour, but we had so many workshops, and I'm so glad we did throughout the year because I learned so much. And so we began learning about the origins of this program, like the LA riots in 1992 and the tension between Korean Americans and African Americans. And then we went into culture and different cultural behaviors and the 4 dimensions of culture, which are interactive, subjective, objective, and material, and how they can affect the society and how they affected ourselves. And we went on to learn about Korean history. We started by reading the book Still Life with Rice, which is a memoir about a Korean woman, written by a Korean woman about her grandma and her experience during the Japanese occupation and the Korean War. And it showed us a new perspective in the historical events we were learning, like the Japanese occupation. And we also watched the movie Ode to My Father, which was really informative on like the resilience of Korean people during the Korean War, because it was about a Korean man and his experience during the war. And that was some things we learned about the Korean history. And an interactive thing we did together was we had a virtual simulation with the White House Decision Center at Harry S. Truman Presidential Library and Museum. And during the simulation, we each got assigned a role, and we explored like the Korean conflict and tension between North Korea and South Korea, which was a great way for us to learn. And it was a very fun experience. And that was how we got to know Los Angeles and Missoula, the cohorts. We also, not only were our workshops here and virtually, but we also went to the Met, and we visited the Korean exhibit, and we learned about like the Korean art with the associate curator, which was really fun. And I'm grateful for this opportunity to explain what I've learned and my insights. Thank you.
Thanks, Alexa. And Oliver, traditionally, youth ambassadors come from New York, LA, a decidedly, urban coastal youth voice. And both with large populations of Korean Americans and very old populations of Korean Americans, old in the sense of being here a long time. However, in 2019, we included a cohort from Montana, arguably a smaller city, a rural location. And during the year, we had periodic engagement. Since COVID, we could go virtual and actually do things together virtually. So that happened periodically. And then we got together with the other two groups in this very, very intensive study experience. So what struck you about the nature of the three groups, and what surprised you about it, and how we interacted?
Yeah. So, going on the Zooms, we didn't really get to know the other students so much from other parts of the country. But of course, the assumption for most of us is that when we go there, we're obviously going to probably connect more with the LA kids, because Montana is such a different lifestyle compared to America. And I think when we arrived initially, I was a little timid. I was definitely a little scared because I wasn't. These are very new people. It's a new experience, a new country. So I think I immediately grasped to my New York friends because I already knew them. Fortunately, the advisors kind of pushed us to really interact with everyone else. Every night we had a different hotel room with different people. On the bus, they moved our seats around. So after a while going through the trip, we really got to engage with new people. At first, interacting with Montana kids was very interesting. At first, they told us that they all ride horses to school. That was a total lie. But a kid from New York, I didn't know that, so I believe them. They all had names for their horses, so I believe that. But as the trip went on, we developed really strong bonds with a lot of these kids. I think one of my favorite experiences, and it didn't feel so profound when I was there, but we got to tour Ewha University, and we got to meet with a professor from Yonsei while we were there. And we were kind of talking about, and at this time of the trip, we went to go see Hyundai, we went to go see POSCO, we had the temple stay. And so I think, we had these long bus rides between locations. And so I had a lot of thoughts and a lot of reflections on the trip we'd had so far, but I didn't really voice those to other people yet. And so interacting with this professor, we were given the chance, and he had so much information, so much insight to really talk to him and gain information on what he knew about the country since he had been there for so long. But, we also got introduced to this very unique rural perspective, right? There was a kid named Evan who grew up on a native reservation. And so we were kind of talking about, there's a problem in Korea right now where interracial and the society is becoming less homogenous. The society is having to learn how to deal with that, right? People are asking, can someone be Korean if you're not 100% Korean, right? And so he introduced the perspective from the the reservations, where he was talking about, being mixed race, because he was half white, half native, right? And so he was talking about his experience and, his affinity to being part of the tribe. And so that was a very unique experience and a very unique perspective. I'm from New York. I get to interact with so many different people every day. And I think I take that, one, for granted sometimes. Two, I think what could someone from this very rural part of the country tell me about the world that I don't know yet? And, this rural perspective totally opened that up for me. So Yes, there's a lot of unique experiences. Another girl from Montana named Reese, she told us about trading with her and her father would go out and hunt. I believe there's elk and moose, and then they would bring this meat and they would go and trade it with these groups of people living in Montana. And these are parts of America, parts of the world I knew nothing about. This experience was also applied also to the Korean high schoolers we met. Right, very the Korean high schoolers, you go into it and you don't think you can relate to them because they live in such a different part of the world to you. But through interacting with them and through speaking to them, you realize, there is this very shared universal experience we all have. And even though they're Korean and I'm an American, we both are going through this teenage experience, growing up and coming of age. And so, we end up finding a lot of relations to each other that I didn't expect to find at first. Thank you.
Thank you, Oliver. Jordan. I know you heard a few things from your sister probably after her 40 workshops, but what surprised you the most or didn't meet your expectation, during the program, at any point of the program, and sort of during the study tour? What was the hardest thing you had to adjust to?
Yeah, all right. In terms of the workshops and they're alone, I found we got to interact with the LA and Montana kids like a lot more than I thought we would, which was great considering how different and similar they were. It adds a new perspective to the program. Being from another coastal urban city, the LA kids were both similar to us and different because in LA, some of them were from the more urban part of LA, but some of them were from the more suburban, rural parts of the outskirts of LA. The Montana kids were a completely different perspective from us, being from Montana, a place with like a completely rural open space, not like New York City. In terms of the study tour, the first culture shock hit when we landed at Incheon. We came here from we arrived there from JFK, and my first thought was how much cleaner the airport was. It was almost futuristic, considering how JFK looks. And then go to the bathrooms in there. Almost all of the Korean toilets have bidets, which is wonderful. And if only America could do the same. But, and yeah, just like upon leaving the airport too, just the streets were so much cleaner than a lot of New York City streets. Just looking outside, it's amazing how much cleaner it is considering the lack of public garbage cans. It was also hard for me to adjust to the money in Korea. Korean money comes in like different sizes and colors, which is great. Helps people who have problems with differentiating. But I've constantly found myself bringing less money than I thought I was, considering I wasn't used to where the numbers on the money actually was. It was also hard for us as a whole to adjust to the noise levels in Korea. As a large group of Americans, we were far louder than everyone around us. And even by the end, we weren't completely able to adjust to how much quieter Koreans spoke than us. And building on talking, at restaurants, we have had this problem of people like to move around and talk and socialize while eating. And we just completely stood out at restaurants because of it. It was so bad to the point that group leaders had to like remind us that we should sit down and eat without walking around to talk to friends.
Thanks, Jordan. We finally got, I just have to say, so for those of you who have flown out of Terminal 1 at JFK, you can imagine the difference, when we landed. But the other thing too, in the restaurants, we finally got to the point, it's just read the room. Just read the room. What are other people doing? And that seemed to begin to sink in. But thank you. So Sophia, early in our study tour, we spent 2 nights, not just early in our study tour. We landed in the evening, we went to sleep. But the very first day, after activities, we went to the temple and we stayed there for 2 nights. In the mountains of Jeollabuk-do at the Sununsa Temple. And not having prior familiarity with Buddhism, what struck you the most about the experience?
Okay. Well, coming from such a competitive and fast-paced culture like ours, I welcome the relaxed nature of the stay at Sononsa. I think like the main thing that stood out to me was the attention to the immediate. Like you don't think about the future, you don't think about the past. It's just what you're experiencing right now. I don't know about all of you, but personally, I'm a pretty stressed person. I mean, as you can see, I have these cards here. And like I'm always thinking about the next like 5 things I have to do. So it was really nice to take a breath and like calm down. And yeah, I like that. The first experience that we had there was mealtime. I think that was like one of the core parts of our stay there. Let me take like breakfast, for example. We would wake up at 5:30. It was still dark outside. It was cold. We're wearing our little temple outfits, and we had like just a t-shirt on. I don't know. I was freezing. And then we'd have to walk down 20 minutes to get to the meal area. And there we'd eat. And one of the main rules at the like dining area was not to talk. And so naturally, some of my friends decided to sign to each other. But that like it wasn't just talking that was the issue. Like it wasn't just the noise. It was mainly communication. Like I think one of the main Buddhist values is to just focus on what you're currently doing, and like just focus on the food, focus on what you're eating, not really on other concerns like what your friend is saying. Yeah, another interesting thing that I found about the meal in the Buddhist temple was that they don't like, okay, A, they're vegetarian, and B, they don't eat scallions, onions, and garlic because it stimulates the central nervous system, and that like makes it hard to meditate or something. So that was really cool. I don't know. I've never really paid that much attention to my food. Another cool experience, we had the opportunity to have a tea ceremony with Monk Song, and there she told us how to drink tea properly. So first you're supposed to take the tea and then you look at it and like you see, it's yellow or something, and then you see little tea leaves swirling around, then you bring it up to your nose and then you smell it. And then finally you drink it, but you don't like just swallow it, you just like, you taste it. I don't know, I mean, again, I've never really put that much attention onto tea drinking before, so that was cool. And we also had these really cool cookies. And finally, there was like the emphasis on relaxation and calming down. Monk Song talked about how she meditated for 10 or 15 years, which I thought was very cool because I don't know, I wouldn't be able to just sit down and like be with myself for that long. We also, next to the dining area, there was an area for monks to like meditate, and I assume that that's what they did for like while they were not eating or sleeping. And there was also like nature hikes. We went together as like a group to the top of a mountain somewhere, and we saw a monk like meditating next to a giant stone Buddha on the wall. Maybe you could see it in the photos that they show later on. And there was also like we would walk just by ourselves, and then I don't know, my group came across a little bridge, another group came across a cave, and I don't know, it was just very pretty. I like the attention to just like being with nature and just experiencing the natural life around you. So sorry. Yeah, so I thought that it was really nice to have the temple stay at the start because it was a nice like calming down from school life and from like the 16-hour plane ride. I think we all need a little rest after that. So yeah, and it was it was the part of the trip that I was most excited about. So I'm like happy it didn't disappoint.
Kyler, if you were told that you could remember one thing and one thing only about the study tour and or the program, what would it be? What would it be that you think you would have to choose?
Yeah, I think my first thought would be visiting the DMZ and the JSA, just because how surreal of an experience it was. We were escorted by the U.S. and the Korean military. We had lunch on the military base, and we were actually able to visit the tunnels going across to the borders, and then actually able to go to the JSA and step onto the North Korean side. And I think just being there, you could feel like the weight of the situation, and seeing like the North Korean flag like waving on the other side was just surreal. And one moment in particular that made it very real was that before we had to go to the JSA, we were briefed by an American soldier, and he had to ask before we left, he had to confirm with us that none of us would desert to North Korea. And I think I almost like wanted to laugh at that because it's just like such an absurd thought, but I think him having to actually confirm that was just like made the situation very real. But I think what I would choose to remember would be our experiences with the Korean high school students, in particular the Daegu high school students, because we spent 2 full days with them. And actually later on, I learned that a lot of my family actually went to the same high school in Daegu. So I thought that was really cool. And I think for me, it was just really powerful because that was the time where we were able to actually like build friendships with the people there. And we were able to talk about what it was like to be in Korea, and they could speak candidly about it. They weren't like an employee at a company. It was very different. And they were also our age. And I think I also realized when I was with them that like for the first time I was in the majority and not the minority, and that there were so many people who were my age who looked like me and who were Korean. And I think that was a really powerful experience. And as I started talking to them, I started noticing like small things we had in common that I felt like were Korean. And I think that kind of helped me because for a while I struggled like with the idea of like whether I was more American or more Korean. And I felt like for a while I was very Americanized, but I think being able to spend so much time with them, I realized that like it helped me understand like Korean American is a separate identity than just being Korean or American. And it's really just a blend of both. So, yeah.
And Aiden, for you, what were some specific concepts that you learned during the program about leadership? And frequently you would talk about you learned about yourself.
All right. Well, first things first, I want to talk about the leadership perspective of the question. Like Alexa brought up earlier, the White House Decision Center, to give a little more information about it, it was about, long story, like the decision before entering the Korean War, whether or not to enter it or not. And I had the role of the president at the time. So it made me realize, as someone who's never really been in a leadership position before, how lonely you feel as a leader. Although you're surrounded by people who are trying to get you to make the best call, and at the end of the day, you're alone. No matter how many people surround you, no matter how much information you get, you're going to be the one to make that final call. And when people don't like your decision, you're the one who's going to get blamed. Not the people who gave you the information, not anyone else. It's just you. So that to me opened my eyes and shows how hard of a skill leadership really is to master, because you have to learn within yourself that you have to be okay with being wrong, because there's probably going to be backlash because you can't make everyone happy because there's so many sides. Which then leads me to my next point. I learned a lot about myself over the course of the study tour. I learned a lot about perspective. When I originally was going to go to Korea, I was originally expecting to be completely culture shocked and just feel out of place. That wasn't the case. It felt different enough from New York that I realized I was in another place, but it was still similar enough that I was like, I don't feel like I'm in a whole other continent right now. So I mainly learned that, like everyone else was bringing up, with the high school students. I realized that even though some of them didn't really speak English all that well, although most of them did, which was shocking, it was crazy because, like, I think Oliver was bringing it up. We're all just teenagers. We all still like relate to the same problems and everything. Like, I met a guy over there. His name was Boris. Me and him clicked in like this. We were really tight. Honestly, I could see myself being long-term friends with him if we lived in the same place. And that, to me, like, opened my eyes about perspective, which leads me to my third point. Most people tend to immediately assume the worst case scenario in a negative perspective. What do I mean by that? Let me tell you a story. I was on the elevator ride down from one of the hotels we were staying at. I believe it was in Seoul. And there was this older gentleman staring at me. And first thing that came to my mind, and I feel like a lot of people's minds would be, why is this older gentleman staring at me? What's his problem? But instead, I decided to look at things from a new perspective and think, maybe it's nothing negative. Let me see why he's staring. So I look over him and started a friendly conversation. I said hello. And surprisingly, like I said earlier, he spoke good English. And we had a nice little back and forth. And then he pointed at my hair and was like, is it real? And here in New York, that's like, of course it's real. But then I made me realize, like, over there in Korea, not many people have curly hair or long hair for that perspective. So I was like, it's very real. And I gave it a nice little tug. Gave him a little bit of reassurance that it's real, and I asked him if he wanted to give it a little tug. And at first he was like, no, I couldn't. But like a little kid, he was like, just a little. And he gave it a little tug. And then I found out he was actually in America for a couple years, and it turned into a lovely conversation. So that made me realize that assuming the worst case scenario in certain times is the worst thing you can do. Maybe you think it's like logical to do so, but sometimes I would recommend like doing something different out of your normal routine. Like Linda told us a lot of times, like, if going to school, take a different train, walk a different path, take a different way to class. Even though you know one way's faster, why not go the other way? Because you might notice something that you would never have noticed if you didn't go that different way. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Aiden. And just a little background, excuse me, on the White House Decision Center. That's part of the Harry S. Truman Museum and Library, and they have a White House Decision Center that focuses on 4 of the critical decisions that he had to make during his presidency, one of which is entering the Korean War. And it's a wonderful simulation. They have in-person and virtual. The virtual are shorter, but we did that. But the students actually role play different characters. You were president, other people played Secretary of Defense, and they had to argue. They got to see the now declassified papers. They really are declassified, and like understand that role and then argue that role. And so, as with Aiden as a role, that's where he said, you're alone up there. So thank you for sharing that. And Jackie. So Jackie, there was Saigu, just this past April, after our return from Korea, we had a workshop focused just on the event. In previous programs, there would be more workshops focused, but because of the timing and we've returned from Korea, we had a professor who focuses in on that area. I'm one of those people who's affected by smoke and things, so please excuse me for clearing my throat. But anyway, he shared a lot of information. You read articles. You saw a video that was testimonials from women from the area. And so what insights have you gained from our reading and discussions and the presentations from Dr. Pak at Loyola Marymount, Los Angeles?
Well, firstly was that Sayugu translates literally to April 29th, which is the day the LA uprisings conflicts really exploded. And in the Sayugu film, it takes place in Los Angeles from the perspectives of Korean women shopkeepers, which to me was a very prime example of intersectionality, because not only were these women, they were also Korean. And intersectionality is where many social injustices involving race and gender are constantly overlapping. Another is the media, and the media often depicted pictures of Korean men with guns on top of shops to protect their stores. This created the narrative that Koreans love their property and that they didn't care about human life or the community that their shops were in. This was to further divide the Black and Korean community. And also a video of a Korean man shooting an Asian teen in the head, which happened a year before the LA uprisings, was shown side by side with Rodney King's assault video, just to cause more of an uproar between both communities and further divide them. Also, because a lot of Koreans in Koreatown who didn't have guns, but had Korean radio stations call out to other Korean Americans who did have guns to help them, which made the media turned and sent out to the American public to call them out to be vigilantes and say that they were just trying to do what the cops didn't want to do. Yeah. Because the cops would go out and they would protect Beverly Hills, for example, but not want to protect Koreatown for very racism, yeah. However, this further created the divide between the Korean and African American community. Furthermore, as it created resentment between the two communities. Therefore, the media pushed the narrative that this issue was between the Black and Korean community, when in reality, the Koreans were simply concerned with their own security. The LA uprising then sparked the conversation of identity and how people with different identities could live peacefully together. And as a result of that conversation, this program was created. So,
Thanks, Jackie. And last, but far from least, Biana, what is your biggest takeaway from the program? How would you say your life, your viewpoint, or your values have changed through this program and since the trip?
So as Alexa mentioned, like one of the first things that we did was read this book called Still Life with Rice by Healy Lee. To recap, it's a historical narrative based on the author's grandmother that showcased gender roles, experience in her life, escaping Japanese occupation, adapting to different cultures such as Korea during Japanese occupation, China, and coming back to Korea after the ending of Japanese occupation, escaping North Korea, and at the end of the book, she ended up in California in the US with her family, which moved there. And this made me like learn like about the resilience and to take advantage of like opportunities, because her grandmother in the book, she was really like taking advantage of like everything to survive and keep her family able to like live. And also, it gave me much more depth about Korean history, because I think that when we learn about history, usually we just take it as like, oh, it's just history, right? But through this narrative, it helps us think about, okay, it's history, but also people live through that and people are affected by it. So yeah, that just changed my mind, not changed my mind, but just gave me more depth about the whole experience and learning about the Korean War when we went there and the DMZ and all that. Secondly, it helped me become more comfortable traveling with without my family. Sorry, because this is like probably most of us like first time traveling to another country without our families. So at first I was like really nervous, but I've grown more confident. I was able to ask questions and connect with people from like America, the LA group, and the Montana group. And also, like, I would just be able to be in this new environment with like language barriers and different cultures. And I think like I did a good job stepping up. And also, another thing is that I'm interested in STEM and doing something related to technology in the future for college. So we did some industry tours, right? We went to POSCO, which is a steel factory, and we literally saw like steel get made. And we went to KITA, which is a Korean International Trade Association. They talked about like a lot of stocks and stuff, which I didn't really understand, but it was really interesting. And then we went to Hyundai, which is a motor and heavy industry company. We saw like cars being made. Like, I thought that was so cool. They took us to a tour. It was like really like a special experience, and just it's just like so much new opportunities of what I can do and is out there for people. And also they talked about like how the companies from the Korean War, like they built up, and like the founders and all that, and how they started from almost nothing and they like continue to thrive and be able to like rise to the occasion, basically. And lastly, I think that one of the most lasting things on me was that I found people who are similar to me. So there's this one high school that we went to. I think it's our last meeting with students in Korea. It was Daedong Taxation High School. I met this one really nice girl called Hayeon, and we like immediately connected, even though first of all, like she was struggling to talk to me and I was struggling to talk to her because I spoke English and she didn't, and I didn't speak Korean either. And we were like writing on our phone and trying to translate, but we had no Wi-Fi, so it was really like bad. But we talked about like personality types, which is I learned a really big thing in Korea. And yeah, so I just learned that, you know, I could connect with people despite our differences and grow, you know? And also, on behalf of the whole group, I want to thank the Korea Society and the Korea Foundation for this incredible experience. It's been life-changing. Thank you.
Thank all of you. Thank all of you for your great, summations of your experience. I think you can see themes through this sort of self-learning, being aware, resiliency, right? Learning about yourself, learning about others. And really, it's been a pleasure working with each and every one of you. At the end of every single visit that we made in Korea, we would sing Arirang. So I would like the group to come forward, just stand up, I guess, and sing. But I'd like past alumni, right? Chaperones, students, if you can stand up, because all of you sang Arirang too on your trips. So please stand up. Or if you're shy and don't want to stand up and you want to sing from your seats, but please do. Okay. So you're going to get us started, Sophia. So now we're opening this up. If you have any questions for anyone, for any of our speakers that are here present with us, for any of our students, we have time for that. Have any come in over the virtual? No? Okay. Then I won't turn on my phone and try to see them. Anyone have a question? Yes.
I have a question. So we were just talking about this. We did it 8 years ago. And for us, we were talking about how to kind of preserve our energy throughout that whole trip because it were really, really long days. So I was wondering.
I'm so sorry. Can you restart that with a microphone?
Because we are recording. Yeah.
Of course.
Thank you.
So wonderful and on a roll. One more time. Thank you.
But we were delayed with the mics. Thank you for your patience.
I'll just skip to the good part.
Yeah.
How did you all preserve your energy each day? And if you felt yourself slipping, getting really tired, how did you motivate yourselves to stay present because they are really long days?
Well, a little bit of coffee, I think. Had a little bit of coffee. The temple offered coffee. I'd also say there was a lot of sleeping.
Not on the temple grounds, but right outside.
Yes.
There was a cafe.
Yes. And then also, of course, sleeping on the bus. But, for me personally, the trip was so busy that it was hard to fall asleep. Like, there's so many things going on all the time that I just didn't find myself necessarily like getting too tired just because we were always doing something. There was so many new experiences all the time. Yeah. I don't know if anyone else.
Well, I just want to second what Oliver said. I feel like because it was such like a tight, packed schedule, that was always like go, 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 go. So it's like when you got to that hotel, you just passed out on your bed. You know what I mean? It's like you got showered, you got comfortable, and it was just donezo. But I feel like preserving energy, I feel like everything there like kept me like active. Like everything from like the amusement park we went to the DMZ to like things like that. Everything was like you couldn't fall asleep because it's like no one was that tired. You know what I mean? But that was a very good question.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. Also, I think that we started out with the temple, so we just started like walking a lot. And I just remember like coming back from Korea, I was like calling out my friends like, guys, let's go out, because I was so used to just walking so much every day. I think that it just built up my stamina, and it was really fun. I was really excited.
One advantage they had that you didn't have. What time did you arrive in Korea?
Like 6 a.m.
Yeah. And what's the first thing you did? You changed clothes? Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Oh, you practice a dance. There would be a dance that they do along with singing Arirang, but we're not going to torture you with that. So, yeah, one advantage they had was that we took an afternoon flight, which got us, we arrived at about 6 p.m. We had dinner at the airport, and then they got a full night's sleep. So they start, and then the temple. So they started a little more refreshed. But you're right. I mean, you guys would hit the ground running, and by 9 a.m. you were at Kita, I believe. Yeah. So, yeah. I think we have another question over here.
Yeah.
I want to know, what is something you heard about what Koreans think of American teenagers that surprised you, positively, or you just thought was bizarre? Or anyone you encountered.
Well, one thing I found that was out of the ordinary when I went over there to Korea was like, I guess for lack of better term, people over there weren't as like cautious to like a comment on your appearance as people are over here, because as being of Afro-Latino descent, you don't see someone like me every day in Korea. So when I would talk to the students, they would like give me compliments that I feel like some people here would take into offense. Like I was called a couple of things. I was called the King of Africa, for starters. I think it was the Wakanda King, if I'm not mistaken. And I was a photographer over there for the second high school we went to. When she wanted to do photos of me, she was like, "Can you do this?" Like this pose. Which I found, honestly, it wasn't that bad, honestly.
No, it wasn't. It
wasn't bad at all.
It wasn't meant, yeah.
There was no disrespect. Like, you could just tell that they were just trying to, like, what's the word? Open up a conversation. And I found that very interesting, because it's like, it shows like the difference between America and Korea. Because I feel like here in America, that would be extremely offensive. You'd get like taken down on Instagram the next day. But but over there in Korea, I found it was very peaceful, because I didn't take offense to it, because I knew they had very good intentions. Like, they all said it with a smile on their face. It was like, it just added to the mood a little bit of comedy, but they didn't know they were being funny. So it was like, that just brightened my trip, to be honest.
Anyone else?
As well, I think a lot of Korean students didn't think that we would know any other language besides English, and that we also like only ever like lived here in America, have never traveled. But I am bilingual, so I speak English and Spanish, and that allowed me to like connect more with Korean students, because they as well take a lot of like foreign language classes. So they didn't really expect me to at least like know more than like one language. So, and they also didn't expect me to like go to like other countries, because my parents are from Mexico and Ecuador, and I've been there before. So that just like made them be like, oh, like that's so cool, and they asked me a lot more questions, and it just allowed more of a like a conversation between us both. Because yeah, I'm not very good at conversations 101, so that was just yeah. So.
As far as languages go, I think this is super interesting. The first high school we went to, the students there, their English wasn't as good. And of course, my Korean, I know 2 words. But very interestingly...
Let's just say their English was better than your Korean.
Yes, very true. But interestingly, we were in a French classroom, and I take French at school. So instead of talking English or Korean, we actually spoke a little in French, which I thought was a very cool experience. And I also met the French teacher, and she started speaking way too quick, and I didn't know what she was saying. But yeah, that was a really great experiencing for me. It doesn't really answer your question, but it's just on the topic of language.
Yeah. Any other questions?
I would like to ask this to everyone, but can you recall like the best time that you had like as a momentary joke between either you guys or with like a Korean in general? So.
Oh, don't get them started. Go ahead. They had a good time. Lots of laughing.
Well, this was more like laughing at myself rather than laughing with my peers. But during the temple, as Jordan alluded to, I was one of the many students who had trouble adjusting to Korean eating etiquette. So at the temple, they were serving sweet potatoes, and these sweet potatoes were really good. To give it in perspective, they were really good. So I grabbed one after I already had my plate. I went up, I grabbed it, I come back to sit down, and my plate's missing. And I find out my plate just didn't grow legs and run away. My friend Max from Montana picked up and went to go clean my plate for me. I was like, what a nice guy, but I need my plate back. So I get up and I'm going to go ask him for the plate. But as I'm walking over to him, I realized I can't ask him for the plate if you can't talk in the temple, because I didn't want to be disrespectful. So I was stuck between a rock and a hard place. So I went back, took a bite of my potato while walking, which was a mistake on my part. And Linda made sure I realized that, because when I sat down, I got a stern talking to for eating while walking. And
in the temple dining room.
which again, I apologize. But then I walk outside and I see Kyler, Oliver, and all the other kids scarfing down their potatoes, just trying to swallow them as fast as I can because they thought I was getting yelled at for taking a potato after I got done eating. So they didn't want to get in trouble either. So I just walk outside and they're just scarfing down their potatoes. And I go and explain to them why I got a stern talking to. And they're like, oh. So yeah, that was more of a like, I learned to laugh at myself instead of like taking it on the chest. So that was a pretty fun experience.
So at the temple, they actually have signs of like a monk, and underneath it says silence, right? So just so you know that we have a little packet with some material, and we've created a bookmark of that for all of you, just to remember your time at the temple and trying to be quiet.
One like event that I remember at least was when we were saying goodbye to the Daegu students, which I'm not like a very emotional person, but for that, I guess like I'm really bad at goodbyes. I was trying to keep it in. A lot of us were trying to like keep it in to like not cry when saying goodbye to them. But we did spend like 2 whole days with them, and I don't know, we got like a real like connection. And there was just one student who unfortunately was stuck with like children. Well, not unfortunately, fortunately, but she was with children, and at first she didn't want to be with them. But once it was time to say goodbye, she just started crying because, you know, they're little kids, and the little kids started crying. And I felt so bad for her because that's such like, I don't know, that was just really bad. But there was someone in our group who just like made it a little bit worse for her by showing her pictures on the bus.
Of her crying?
No, not of her crying, of her of her memories with like the kids.
Oh, okay.
Because she like took them out to like get ice cream and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything from the audience, anything you want to share? Chelsea, I'm going to put you on the spot a minute and just say, you know, you went through 40 workshops, you know, so now you've been out for a couple of years, you're at USC, and, you know, what is the thing you remember? What is the thing that was the biggest takeaway for you? I'm actually curious with your group because they were so wonderfully patient and so hopeful that in one of those years they would get to enjoy the study tour, but we still had a great time.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely think we had a great time, and all of the girls from my cohort, we still keep in touch these days. We meet up. Although we didn't get to go on a trip, we did like form a very good friendship, which I think was really valuable. Also, I remember distinctly we did a Zoom with like some of the Korean students, and I still have their Instagram, and they text me. Sometimes they're like, you guys never got to come, but we wish you did. So that was really fun. I think the connections I got out of the experience was the best part.
Right, we did virtual meetings with Banpo High School, and also with, was it Daedong Taxation?
I think so.
Yeah, high school. So even though we couldn't go, they had connections with the high school students. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to be the only one, you know, keeping you away from the food. Okay, and so we do have certificates to award, and so I just want to do that very quickly, and then, you know, please enjoy. For you all, stay on this stage because we want to get a group picture. And then at a certain point, were you going to say something?
No, I was going to respond, but I don't know what I was going to talk into the
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, just to you. I was going to say, yeah.
Oh,
But
okay.
just didn't.
So what we can do is I can hand those out, and then if you want to get pictures one-on-one, we'll definitely do that. But Alexa, again, certificate of completion. Completion awarded to Paula. And certificate of completion awarded to Julie. And then another one, certificate of completion awarded to Sophia. she does bring, because we have high school students here, I was forbidden from bringing in any, bubbly or but we have a lot of different sodas and waters and soft drinks. So please help yourself. We have some a good variety, I think. So, I have a, what's that? What's that? So you have in here, you have to cover you have quiet. I have never crossed the Korean never crossed the ocean. And then there's also a poem about